He will be presenting the many victims of cults, sexual abuse, child abuse, and fraud. Mark Roggeman retired in 2010 from the Denver Police Department after 39 years and has been researching cult groups for over 30 years. This has been accomplished by studying them and also by infiltrating several cult groups. He has learned much by assisting families who have in some way been affected by a cult, usually when a relative has become involved. He provides them with information, if available, on the particular group they are dealing with and educates them on how cult groups operate and with information on exit counseling. He was a presenter at the National Gang Crime Research Center annual conference held in Chicago on 3 occasions, addressing the issue of cults and gangs. He is a regular speaker for Regis University and at the Aurora campus located in downtown Denver. He also served as a member of the board of directors of the original Cult Awareness Network during the early 80s and was a founding member of the Denver affiliate. He was a contributing author to the book Cults and Consequences, edited by Rachel Andrus, James Name, and published by the Jewish Federation, 1988. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I don't want to add anything to that, so I'm going to get right into it. Today we're going to focus more on cults and crimes. Cults and sex crimes. There's a lot of different facets to these religious cults, and most of the ones I study are religious in nature. Some of them claim to be Christian. Some of them say they're Bible-based. To me, none of that is true. They use those things in order to achieve their ends. These leaders, they'll use the Bible or any other holy book, from any religion, but they distort whatever the real truth is of any given group. They just take out. In other words, the leader has a preconceived plan, and they find the things in those particular resources, the Bible and other books, to fulfill their preconceived plan. In other words, they look for verses, and you could do that in any book you read. But when you take it out of a book of authority, it means something. This here, if you ever need any information, I try to keep this updated. This is a web page I've been running for a couple of years now called Cults and Law Enforcement. I try to keep current videos, current cases of things that are going on around the country. You try to keep it updated because, believe it or not, there's always new things. We all remember, a lot of you, how many of you remember Jonestown? Wow. Okay, that's good, 1978. So I try to keep things updated, from those type of things. And of course, then we had the Waco deal. If you remember Jonestown, you remember Waco with the Branch Davidians. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about each one of these groups. And actually, when I started researching in 1976, I was really, about the first 2 years, I was just studying what the groups believed, having no idea about the control that goes on and how that is affected and how people are brought in total subservientship to the leaders. And then when Jonestown happened in '78, I'll never forget, I was glued to the television saying, how could someone cause 912 people to take their own lives? Of course, you've got to remember, 230 of those people were children. And most of those were injected with the cyanide by their own parents, which, is amazing. And you'll see the destructiveness of a lot of these cult groups. Oh, this I just put in just to show you a little bit of my history. When I was back in 1981, this just says Denver policeman parents indicted in cult kidnap. That was me. I helped the family find their daughter. I wasn't actually involved in the kidnapping, but I helped them. I guess because I had knowledge. It's a long story, but the charges were dropped. I was reinstated. I promised the chief of police at the time, Art Dill, that I would never do that again in my off-duty hours. And but that was a thing a lot of you remember in the 70s, in the mid-80s, till about 85, the deprogramming issue. Parents who were hiring deprogrammers to literally kidnap their adult children out of these groups, for the purpose of kidnapping. So, I mean, not the purpose of kidnapping, the kidnapping them out for the purpose of deprogramming to get them out. And let me tell you, there was people even on that side of the fence that were unethical, that were taking advantage of families who were desperate because their son or daughter or relative would no longer talk to them because they believed that, as most of these groups say, that if the outside world is evil, they all have a name for the outside world in their own language system. It could be the Systemites, as one group calls them, everybody on the outside is Babylon. There's probably about 10 different names the groups use. But as you can see, I was active in this back in those days. I was helping families across the country. Just got deeply involved, and I still am. But nobody really does this part anymore. Now that it's moved, it's called exit counseling now. And when they help somebody out now, it's not done by force. You try to set it up to get an agreement from the person. That doesn't always work. But you try to get them the information sometimes about the group they're involved in. The FBI, of course, have had their problems with cult groups. In their law enforcement bulletin in September of 2000, they wrote an article on it. And of course, this was after Jonestown, after Waco, the Ruby Bridge incident. All this is mentioned in these articles at Heaven's Gate, as it says on there. And the FBI have a web page that addresses a lot of extremist groups, including the cult that's called the Medigo Project. A lot of good information on there. So I'm going to talk a little bit now, go into the Branch Davidians, as I said, which ended with their compound after a 51-day siege, burning down in Waco, Texas. The leader of this group claimed to be God, David Koresh, whose original name was Vernon Howell. But as it says here, David Koresh, his sexual demands were placed upon women and young girls in his group. According to U.S. Today, while the men live in what some former cultists have described as an angry celibacy, Koresh really takes whatever woman catches his fancy, sometimes his girls as young as 12. It was, when they found out and they let a lot of the children out, about half of his children died in the fire. He had fathered 40 children in the group from the followers of the members. And of course, it's the same old thing, I'm God, you have to do this for me. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. This was a book written by a captain, and I helped him with a lot of the information on this book, Deadly Cults. Captain Snow was the name in the Indianapolis Police Department. This is Jim Jones, if you didn't remember what he looked like. This is somebody wrote here, one leader who shares many similarities with David Koresh is Jim Jones. Jones' sexual gluttony became another focal point. The egotistical leader insisted he only had sex with his followers to satisfy their needs. He presented himself as the only legitimate object of sexual desire. And that's from the book, The People's Temple, People's Tomb. There's a book written by a gentleman that responded, who I met years ago, called The Children of Jonestown. And I tell you, it's a hard book to get through, because he was able to get from some of the surviving members, there was only a few there, but others that were still back in San Francisco, some of the stories and the sexual exploitations, committed upon the followers of the group, everybody, men, women, children. This is another picture of him here. This is, if you all go around, you probably remember this in the front of the Newsweek and Time. I mean, this was a huge deal. The United States Air Force had to go out there, and the guy on the government asked them to remove all the bodies, so they had to fly coffins out there and bring them all back. I'm going to talk a little bit about, probably some of these other cults you've heard of. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Unification Church, also known as the Moonies. Yeah, they used to go around and sell flowers a lot to raise money. The group, he became very, very wealthy. He just died a couple of years ago. He was about 93, I think, when he finally passed away. He claimed to be the Messiah. He claimed that Jesus appeared to him in 1936 on Easter morning and told him that he failed in his mission, that he was appointing this gentleman, Sun Myung Moon, to take his place. And you'll see this as I go through this. Either these leaders claim to be God, or God speaks to them only in a lot of these groups. This is another picture of them. Just a little bit from a couple books that were written. Like here it says, before he arrived in America, his followers say he taught a type of ritual sex. Since Moon was a pure man, sex with him was supposed to purify both body and soul. And marriages of other cultists were in fact invalid until the wives slept with them. And this was well hidden until, I'll show you another book that was written by someone that actually lived with him in Tarrytown, New York, in his mansion there. In 1993, this Chung Pak released a book called The Tragedy of Six Martyrs of Japan. The book contains allegations that Moon conducted sexual rituals among 6 married females, the 6 Marys, who were to have prepared the way for the virgin who would marry Moon and become the true mother. So you see how these people, I just point this out, how they twist this so they can fill their already, what should I say, sexual bents. This is the book of, was written by Nan Suk Ang here. She actually lived in a temple. If I remember correctly, I met her probably about 10 years ago. She was a daughter-in-law and got out of the group. And in the book, In the Shadow of the Moons, because it's a good title because she actually lived in their shadow. And she tells a lot of the exploits of this guy. Of course, they weren't real happy with that. And then this is David Koresh I was talking about. It says here he was born Vernon Howell. You'll see a lot of these guys change their name. Also, in a lot of these groups, the members change their names, which is part of the identity. They'll tell them they have, they become a new creature, whatever they use to do it. You've got to get rid of your own life. But it's just part of the control. Once you change your identity and you have, a new name. Jones was joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church and was starting to go up the ladder there. And then he moved over to the Branch Davidians, which was already in existence when he took it over. And history has it there was a small gunfight that went on at Mark Carmel with the members that were there because he was saying now he was the true prophet. And the whole reason the whole Branch Davidian movement started, believe it or not, it's been around since about 1920, when shortly after Ellen G. White, who was the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist movement, passed away, there was, I can't remember, it slips my mind, but there was another gentleman, it may come to me, who was a leader in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He believed that he was the new prophet. And the church rejected that and said, no, she's the only one, she'll always be the only one. And he broke away, and that's what he branched off, and that's how the name the Branch Davidians came. And then it went through a lot of stages. Another leader after him, and then finally Koresh came in. But most of the people that were all involved in this, the great majority of them had Seventh-day Adventist backgrounds. This here is the actual day that when the fire, and of course there's always, nobody knows to this day who really started the fire. They blame the FBI that they did it. Other people say the group did it. To this day, nobody really knows how that fire started. The government and the law enforcement there denied that they started it. But I say it was a long siege. I think 93 people died in that. So. And then in this article, just a little bit again, you see it. Koresh was fixated with sex and the taste for younger girls. He began to teach that all women in the world belonged to him, and only he had the right to Elizabeth Barbai, who also explain Caress's twisted reasoning on this point. God believed it was necessary to send him down to be sinful Jesus, so that when he stood in the judgment of sinners on Judgment Day, he would have had experienced all sin and all degradation. There used to be an actual guy in Connecticut, he passed away, who had a cult. His name was Brother Julius. He used to use the same analogy as that. He called himself the sinful Messiah. And he was going to commit all the sins for all the followers. But all this is, again, is a way to get what they want, to get the power, the sexual stuff they want. Now, last year at the conference, this is Grace Dominguez. She was here last year. Grace moved back to New Zealand. Now, one of the things a lot of people didn't know, about half the members of the Branch Davidian were New Zealanders. And it was because Grace is Samoan, of the Samoan background, and Koresh used to go to Hawaii once in a while. And as you know, there are Samoans that live in Hawaii. And they have, and I've been in New Zealand, and I've been with her family, and they have a real tribal mentality. I mean, they're really close together. They pool their money together. It's sort of neat, the way I saw how the families operated. But even if they're in Australia or in Hawaii, they keep very closely connected and contacted. So when Koresh was able to recruit some from Hawaii, they called their family members in New Zealand and other places, and that's how it sort of came around. And what's interesting, Grace and her family at that time were, for a while, attending the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So some of this sounded. Now, Grace, if you're here, she told the story last year about when it was her turn. Koresh actually told her, "It's your turn to have sex with me." And of course, Grace did not want to go along with that. She'd been involved a little bit under 2 years at the time. So she went up in the middle of the night with another young lady in the group, and Koresh had the highest point and the only air-conditioned cabin in that compound. So she went up. Of course, she got scared. She was standing outside his door. They were whispering, and this is like 2 o'clock in the morning. And finally, I guess he must have overheard him. He opened the door, and he said, "What are you girls doing?" And Grace just blurted it out. "God told me that it would be wrong to have sex with you." So he rang a little bell that he had above there. When that bell rang, that means all the followers had to go to the chapel, no matter what time of the day. So they all proceeded to the chapel. They put Grace up on the front of the stage, like up here, if it was, had her sit there, and he began to ridicule her in front of the whole group, telling them that she, well, the first thing that she told me that he said was, "Can you believe this? She said that God told me that I couldn't have sex, that she couldn't have sex with me." He goes, who was that talking to her? Because I'm God. And if you listen to a lot of his tapes, you'll hear him say that on occasion. Even in what was really sad, the thing at one time, Grace and I were doing an interview on a cable show, one of the local ones in Denver, about her experience. And while we were sitting there, she just broke down and started to weep uncontrollably. And I remember the guy that was hosting the show, "What's going on?" And she couldn't stop crying. So I didn't know, so we just sort of took over the show. And on the way home, I asked her, I said, "What was going on?" And she said, "It just dawned on me and how much hatred I still was carrying in my heart for my sister, Rebecca." Now, her sister and her first cousin and his wife and a child all died. She had 4 other relatives in the group. Well, that night when she was sitting up there, Rebecca, who was totally committed, obviously, to the leader, went up to Grace and slapped her across the face and berated her for not doing what the leader wanted them to do. And I guess while we were talking in that show, something triggered her to remember that. And she had to deal with that because she didn't realize how bad it was hurting her inside, and had to work through it. And she eventually did. And when she was here last year, she talked about it. But she's in New Zealand now. She went back to help take care of her mother. And she's there now working with a couple cult watch type groups, speaking all over New Zealand and even in Australia. So hopefully maybe someday she'll come back here. Now this is a guy still alive. This is Stuart Trail. He's the leader of about a 2,000 group membership. It's called the Forever Family, or COVA. Now, when it first started in the 60s, it was called the Forever Family, and then he turns it to COVA, which is the Church of Bible Understanding. This group, like Koresh, that's another thing. People took beatings from Koresh to children all the time. Most of these groups, the abuse is across, not only the children, because we worry more about the children than the adults, but it goes on with everybody. But he's stationed out of Philadelphia. They support the group. All of his members go out and they have a vacuum, carpet cleaning type of business. And this group is very intense too, very hard for people to get out of. I've worked with a few people and in exit counseling that have been involved in this group. One was a brother police officer in Denver whose brother got involved in this group. And I was able to help him out. And then I remember his brother called me back up and he said he got back into the group again. That was 2 years later, which it was just devastating. But this is an article that came out about the group, and this went on. This was one where 4 people actually went to jail. They beat this boy 150 times with a board, and he died as a result of it. So, just to give you a little idea, when I talk about victims, you know, of the people that are in these groups. This here is a group called the Remnant Fellowship Church. It's located in Tennessee. This area, and this is rare. There are, and I put this in because there are, there's a lot. Obviously, I can't include in these presentations, but the leader of this group is a woman, and there's several out there. I would say though, from 100%, probably 97% of them are men. But you do have the occasional women that run these groups, which is interesting. And the thing I found out, when the women are running them, the abuse and the discipline seems to be even more extreme than when the men are running them. But that's what it says in here. They said this Joseph Smith died in 2003 on the day he was whipped with a foot-long glue stick, locked in a closet, and told to pray to a picture of Jesus. The ex-members of the church say punishment were in line with the discipline advice they heard while attending the Remnant Fellowship Church. And this is here another family that was involved with the same group. They were sentenced to death. This is just this past year, the beating death of their 8-year-old son. And that's the same boy confined in a wooden box. It took a while for this to go through the court systems and stuff. And here's a picture of the leader. This is Gwen Shemlin. I don't know if any of you ever heard of her, any women ever heard of her. She sort of got into the Christian churches there for a while until a lot of the churches got wise to her through what she calls a way down program. It was a weight loss program mostly for women, and she was going around the country at that time doing that. But yeah, this group has a lot of problems, and a lot of people in those pictures that live there. And of course, she believes that there's another. I was talking to an ex-member of the group, and at a Sunday school, she went in and witnessed, and some of the children that were misbehaving in the Sunday school, they had them tied to their chairs. And when this person went to her and said, "What are you doing that for?" I mean, this is a Sunday school. You're not supposed to be, tying children to their chairs. And she goes, "Those are the Holy Ghost restraints." That was her response to it. He goes, "Well, if it was the Holy Ghost, then you wouldn't have needed the ropes, to tie them." But just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that goes on. Now, this group here, Moses David Berg, he passed away I'd say about 8 years ago now. He founded a group in the mid-'60s, and a lot of groups came out of the mid-'60s, the whole utopia thing, the hippie-type communes and stuff like this. And of course, he started communes, and the group really grew. This guy was probably on the top of the list of the sexual perverts as far as cult leaders go. And this is a story about this young lady that was involved in it, enslaved by a cult of sex for 25 years. Because I remember filming the videos, it was yesterday. He asked me to rub my bottom to wiggle for the camera. And this happened a lot. People, because he spread all over the country, and the girls people would have sexual acts, and even the children, with the children, and stuff, and send the videos to the leader. And that's what she's talking about. So that's what she was sitting there. She goes, quite simply, sexual grooming was an everyday part of my life. Yeah, Moses David Berg, it was found out later, he had 4 daughters. And it didn't come out, one daughter, Deborah Berg, before he died, actually brought it out. After he died, the other 3 finally started admitting it. I think they were afraid. But Deborah wrote a book called The Children of God. And I heard her speak in LA in 1981. There was probably about 500 people in this audience, and the whole conference was about cults. And she got up and started to talk about all these horrible things an individual did. No one really had ever seen her before. And she got up there, and at the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the place, because when she ended, she says, "This man is my father." And she talked about an hour about all these things, and then she said that at the end. And but again, what's interesting about Moses David Berg, though, he had himself ordained and went through the seminaries of the CMA churches. I don't know if any ever heard of the Christian Missionary Alliance. It's actually a legitimate denomination. They have a Bible college and a seminary in Nyack, New York. And you don't see many cult leaders do that, where they actually go and get ordained and get a degree. It doesn't take away any, sexual bent they may have. I mean, so to me, through his education, he learned to manipulate probably better. Here's a picture of them when they started in the 60s. This could be a flashback for some of you. The children of God. Here's one of their main doctrines that's still active today. It's to me, most of the girls I've talked to that have practiced this flirty fishing, obviously it's causing a lot of trauma and things like that, and it's spiritual prostitution is what it is. And what he does, he went to the book of James, and this is a prime example of someone going into the Bible, taking verses out to support his thing. And he goes, any price is not too big to save a soul. Jesus gave his life, and we should be willing to give ours. Would you do it for Jesus, who means sex? Then why not for others? If a brother or sister being naked and destitute of daily food, including sex, and one of you saying to them, depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding, you give them not those things which are needful to the body, sex. What does it profit? Now, if you notice, maybe you notice on the bottom, I took that right off, word for word, and you can find it today on their webpage. The family, they're called today. They changed the name from the children of God to the family. So, and I couldn't believe, that. I mean, that book of James, what he's really talking about there is what religion should look like, helping people. And he took that and, twisted it. The flirty fishing. Before the internet, this is the little booklet that they used to put out, Flirty Little Fish. And the girls not only would have sex with the men in the group, but they were very encouraged to go out and recruit new members by having sex with, and they still do that today. They'll have sex with the girls will have sex with a guy to get them to join. So this is just another thing that David Moses Berg wrote also on the webpage. It says unselfish love. I'm not just talking about fleshly gratification, but the love for someone, sacrificial love, even risky love, even dangerous love. These here are 3 young ladies that grew up in a group. And that's another thing that I'll be talking about today, because when I first started in this research and helping people, it was people that came in. A lot of people were, well, I say kids, recruited in college and stuff like that. What has happened is now we're dealing with the children of these people. And the second is a lot worse than the worst. A lot worse than the first. Because at least the people before, they had a life before the group. And when you could talk to them, you could sort of compare things. But when they grow up in the group, and this is going on, and all the years are going up from, a lot of them from when they're 10, 11, 12 years old, especially in this group, even younger in this group. Like I said, this one was worse. Some of the others at least waited to 10 or 12. That's still bad, but I'm just saying this one. This is 3 girls. I think these 3 girls are both on the Oprah Winfrey Show and Dr. Phil. So this here is a picture some time ago, David Berg, and all the women around him. So what I want to do, real quick here, I'm going to change. I'm going to show trying to get to a video here. Oh my goodness. Takes a minute to switch around. This video here is just a part of an HBO documentary that was done by Noah Thomas, who grew up in a group. It's only 10 minutes long. It'll give you a good idea. This and the video just came out, I think, 2007. And you'll see Noah. He's going to be talking to his mother that's still in the group. And that's one of the things with these people that grow up in a group, too. When they leave, they have no support because their families shun them, abandon them, because, they were the bad ones. They left God, so let me get to... Working on it. Should be sound.
Members charged with child abuse. 144 children, biggest police operation of its kind ever.
Police investigating a religious cult accused of brainwashing and sexually abusing hundreds of children.
Synchronized raids in 2 states against a religious sect known as the Children of God.
Children have been exposed to sexual contact with adults. Moses is an unknown figure, a mystery man.
The goal is to bring down my own mother. You little cunt. God damn. How can you do that to kids? How can you do that to kids and sleep at night?
This meeting